Yeah. Hello.
Hey, hey, hey.
How's
Hi.
it going?
Man, it's going good. I'm so glad to have y'all on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Man, I feel a little starstruck, actually.
We feel starstruck, truthfully.
Well, hey, that's really cool. But yeah, thank y'all for being on here. I do appreciate it.
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
uh, just to give you a little backstory, man, I have to tell you, Seventh Day Slumber is probably like, I mean, top two favorite Christian bands I have. Well, all I listen to is Christian
Oh
music
man.
nowadays. But so my dad died 5 years ago, and during that time of him dying, like literally all I listened to was the Take Everything album every
Yeah,
single day, all day long, and it definitely got me through some stuff. So thank you.
that's so cool, man. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, for sure. So I know y'all are probably busy, so I did write down some questions. And
Yeah.
the questions I asked, just both of you can answer them. I'd love that.
Okay.
Okay.
I'd like to know kind of what was your encounter with Jesus like? Um, where were you at versus where you are now?
Okay. Yeah. If you want to answer first.
Yeah, so I grew up in a Christian family, and so Jesus was always kind of a part of my life. Um, but it wasn't something that I took like kind of onto my own until later. Um, and I had an encounter with God. It changed my life as a young, somewhat teenager, and I started to try to kind of figure things out. I was in a band with my sisters before this, and we were talking to people about God, sharing what He's done in our life, and we had a lot of people talking to us about their mental struggles, and you know we didn't just play churches, and so sometimes people didn't want prayer, and so I felt like maybe it was important for me to go to school for crisis counseling and figure out that side of things.
Oh, wow.
And then I started to kind of experience some of my own struggles, and it was one of those things where I was somewhat of an independent kid, and so that kind of ended up bleeding into my relationship with God, where I was like, okay, well, I can figure this out on my own. I don't need your help, and I don't even know if you really care about it that much. Like, I'll don't worry. Um, and I struggled with an eating disorder. I struggled with depression. There was a lot of control issues I had in my life. And in 2022, God called me and my sisters out of this band that we were in. And it really felt like my whole world had just imploded because I didn't know who I was outside of that band. I didn't know who I was outside of being a band member and sister and whatever was attached to all of that. And when that was pulled away, it felt like there was nothing left. And I was really angry at God and confused, and I had to process a lot of grief and loss from that situation. And I felt like I wasn't done with music, but I really didn't know what that would look like. And if I was supposed to travel on my own, that meant I didn't get to see my family as much anymore because they were on the road with me, and none of my like regular life existed anymore. And so even though I was angry with God, he was all I really had left to hold on to. And my mental health got a lot worse. And I was dating Blaise at the time. And so he was there to support me and he pushed me to talk honestly with God. And I struggled with even wanting to live for a while because of everything. It got so heavy. I didn't really have a church community. And so it was really just me holding on to God and saying, okay, well, I'm really angry, but you're all I got. So like it's gotta something's gotta give. And yeah, he started to work on me through this process, and I started to learn how to let go of things and to walk into this new calling that he had placed in my life. And it just the more I was honest with God, the more he was able to heal my heart. And I
Wow.
went from being super depressed, very miserable, not wanting to live, and then experiencing healing that wasn't immediate. It was gradual because God wanted me to learn to trust him, and he wanted me to know that he would walk with me through all these things. I didn't need to do it by myself anymore.
That's
And
really
I'm
good.
medication free now. I don't
Nice.
struggle with any eating disorder habits or thoughts. Um, I'm able to have good relationships with people. I've learned how to have a relationship with my family, even though they're not on the road. And we've learned how to talk digitally now, which is not something we ever had to do before.
Yeah,
I got to marry Blaise. We're in a band helping people now, and there's just so much joy and hope in my life. And I genuinely would not be here if it wasn't for Jesus. And that sounds really cliche, but
not at
there's just so
all.
much
Not at
like
all.
work that he's done on my heart and in my mind. And I don't think I would even recognize myself like 3 years ago. Like I think I would walk past that person and not even know that that was me. And
Wow.
so it's just crazy, like just the difference. There's so much more clarity in my mind. I can think clearly, and obviously there's still times where there's bad days, but God has given me a church community and a family out here on the road who has taught me how to pull myself out of those deep ruts, and I don't get stuck in them anymore, which is awesome.
Yeah,
That's beautiful.
yeah. No, it's so cool to see how much she's grown because I've been with her throughout that entire time, and so just seeing how far she's come in that amount of time has been super super cool. Um,
That's
but
awesome.
yeah, similar to her, I grew up in a Christian family as well. My dad is the singer for Seventh Day Summer, so I
Yeah.
grew up watching my dad do altar calls and watch him pray with people and watch my mom pray with people and all kinds of stuff. Like I watched it all my whole life and grew up in that. Um, but I didn't really have like my own like. I mean, I was Christian because my family was a Christian, but I
Right.
didn't really have
Right.
my own like relationship with God until probably around like 9 or 10. I just asked God to go into my heart, and obviously, he did, and so
Yeah.
that's kind of where it started. But I hadn't really gone through much until this is. I'm going to shorten the story down a little bit because it's a long story, but
Hey,
but
take your time, man.
my dad, he actually like growing up, like I said, my dad was my hero, and so seeing my dad do all this amazing stuff, and even just stuff that outside of ministry, just like regular dad stuff, like
Yeah.
building us a half pipe or doing
Oh,
things
cool.
that are like, oh, that's my dad is so cool. He can whatever it is, and so my dad was like my superhero. Um, and he actually fell into, and he talks about this. We actually have some songs written about this as well, but he actually fell into a struggle after becoming a Christian with alcohol, and it was really hard on our family because like I said, I saw my dad as my superhero this whole time, and it got so bad to a point where like it didn't used to be an issue until it was, and then it got
Wow.
to a point where I was 11, 12, having to help pick my dad up off the ground because he couldn't stand up on his own because he had drank so much.
Yeah.
And it was really tough. It was hard on our family. And so um, I had gotten to a point where because I'm the oldest out of three brothers as well. And so even though I was only, around that age at the time, I still felt like I had to be the protector, the older brother, the one that like is
Yeah.
there to take everything for them so they don't have to. And even for my mom, even though obviously it's my mom, it just how it is being a teenage boy. You're like, I gotta take care of everybody,
Right.
and so
Right.
that's how I felt. And so like I didn't show much emotion ever, and I always kind of acted like it didn't really bother me, but like deep down, it hurt so bad, and I was scared, and I didn't know. I was confused. I didn't know what was happening, and so when I would be like in my room, that would be where I would kind of just be able to just cry. And I spent a lot of nights crying in my room and just praying and just asking God to fix my dad and asking God to heal him of his addiction and the stuff that's hurting him and causing the addiction and whatever it is. I was like, God, just take it away, help heal our family, whatever it is. And then it got to a point where like it felt like God was just not listening, which obviously he was, but to me it felt like he wasn't. And I'm like, God, where are you? And then you spiral down this thing to like, God, do you care about me? Are you listening? And then it got to a point where I'm asking God if he's real. And I don't know, like I'm starting to question that. Like he's not doing anything. I've seen stuff. Maybe those things are coincidences. Maybe it's just I don't know. I don't know what I believe, and it was hard. But even through that time, I still would pray and I would still ask God to do things, and I would ask Him, God, if you, I would usually start it with God, if you're real, and then I would just kind of
Yeah.
like then finish and pray and stuff, and it was really hard. It was a really hard time for our family, and but uh, looking back, God was there in every moment, and I could see now where He was, but in the moment I didn't see any of that, and so we ended up finishing this tour. and it actually was a tour with Maggie and her old band GFM. But it was a tour with them, and we came off of this tour, and my dad had gotten really sick, and so he went to the doctor, and he thought maybe it was like diabetes or something because he had gained a lot of weight during this time, and he kind of just was super. He was going through his own stuff too, and he was struggling with a lot of thoughts and a lot of things that he never really dealt with, and he kind of just pushed down, and so uh, he thought maybe it's type 2 diabetes, maybe it's just that, maybe it's something else or whatever it was. And so he went to the doctor, um, and they were like, all right, we just did a bunch of test results or a bunch of tests, and we'll send you the results whenever we get them, probably in about a week, and then you can come back in and we'll talk to you about it all. And they ended up calling him later that same day, which normally, like when you're at a doctor's appointment, they usually get your results in a few days. But
Right.
like they called him that same day and were like, "Hey, Joseph, you need to come in like today again. You need to come back in like today." And my dad was like, he hates going to the doctor, and so he was like, "Um, I'll probably do it later. Can I do it like after this, whatever? Can I do it next week or whatever?" And they were like, "No, you need to come in like right now." And and then they asked if his wife, my mom, like, is your wife with you? And he was like, yeah. And they told her they told him like you need to bring her as well, and which is not a good sign.
Never
And
good.
so they sent them the address, and it was a different place than where they had initially gone. Um, but it ended up being like a liver specialist, and so they showed up, and my dad knew. He's like, man, like he knew what that meant when you see a liver specialist or an alcoholic. You can put two and two together and realize it's
Right.
probably something wrong with your liver. And so he showed up, and they were going to talk to him. He asked my mom to wait in the waiting room because he didn't know what they were going to say, or he kind of had an idea, and he was like, I don't want you in there. And so she stayed in the waiting room, and the doctor pretty much just told my dad, like, hey, I'm going to be honest with you. You have end stage cirrhosis of the liver, and it's pretty bad. And he was like, okay, well, what does that mean? Like, how long do I have left? And they told him that he had probably 2 years left to live, five at the very, very most. And that's if he stopped drinking like today. And he was obviously like, man, like he felt like he let everybody down. He felt like he let our whole family down. And so he was distraught. And so he asked my mom, excuse me, he asked my mom to come in and ask the doctor if he could tell her because my dad couldn't tell her. And so that he told her, and my mom was devastated, um, and it was really hard. And so that was pretty much it. They pretty much told him like, we've seen it go to 5 years, but it's probably not. Like your liver is pretty messed up. And so they left, and that was kind of that section. And so my mom and dad started talking, and my dad was trying to get kind of things in order, trying to talk to my mom like if this doesn't like if I don't get healed from this, and my mom would cut him off like, stop, like you're gonna be healed from this, and like don't even say what you're gonna say. And my dad was like, I mean, I know that, I believe that, but I'm just saying if he doesn't. And she'd cut him off like, no, God is gonna heal you, like stop saying that.
That's
And
awesome.
yeah, and eventually he did get out what he was trying to say, but he basically told her like, if God is not gonna, like, if I don't get healed from this, and if I really do only have however many years, 2 to 5 years left to live, um, I want I want you to have your husband back, and I want my kids to have their dad back. And so
Wow.
he's like, I'm gonna try to do this without going to a rehab. And if I need to go to a rehab, then I will. And I don't care what the news sources or other bands or whatever it is. I don't care what whoever has to say anything about it. Like, this is the most important thing, and I'm gonna do whatever it takes. But he's like, I'm gonna just pray, and I'm gonna try. And so he went home, and he went upstairs and had my mom pour out all the alcohol in the house. And he was at one point he was drinking half a gallon to a gallon of bourbon or vodka like a day. And
Wow.
so he went from that to like, I'm just pour it all out, and I'm gonna lock myself in our bedroom, and I'm just gonna cry out to God. And that's what he did. And so that
Wow.
same day he went upstairs and he just told God, like, God, if you're if you're willing, like, if you could take this from me, I will do what I have to do. I'm willing to sit through the pain. I'm willing to, do the hard part. I'm willing to do my side of it. Um, and so the first day he did that was like horrible, like withdrawals and stuff like that. He had a ton of like crazy pain and like mental stuff that he was thinking about. Like I said, he was thinking about a lot of stuff that he had thought about in years, and it was just all coming back at once. And like
Right.
mental, physical, it was all like attacking him. And the second day was actually worse. Um, and then on the third day, he started to feel a little bit better. And then the fourth day came around, and he was completely healed of that. Like he didn't have any more withdrawals. He didn't have any more of those like crazy thoughts. He was there, and he also didn't have the craving for alcohol. And and so he like he wasn't drinking anymore, and that was that he hasn't drank since then. Um, and so which was awesome. And we didn't know any of this at the time about like his liver and stuff, my brothers, but we knew that my dad was trying to get sober, and he told us he's like, "I'm going
Yeah.
to do this for you guys." And he didn't tell us why. He just told us like, "I want to be sober for you guys." And so we were like, "That's awesome." And so we were praying and everything, and we just prayed for him nonstop. And the only people that knew were my mom and his mom, and so just praying nonstop. And he still had to go to these doctor visits because of his liver. And so they were like, "All right, well, you come in about 3 months from now or something like that." So he went back to the doctor, and they were like, "Okay, well, it doesn't look like your liver got worse. I mean, it still looks horrible, but it doesn't look worse. So that's."
Wow.
And he was like, "Okay, well, is that like, is it supposed to look worse by now?" And they're like, "Yeah, it's supposed to look worse." And he was like, "Okay, well, like, don't tell me anything else. That's all I want to know." And he's like, "I'm gonna leave now." And so he left. And then another like 3 or 6 months, I can't remember what it was, but that went by, and he went to his next doctor's appointment, and they did tests and everything, and they were looking, and they were like, "Well, this is kind of weird because it's like it's getting a little bit better, not by a lot. So like, don't get your hopes up, but it is getting a little bit better."
I love them when
And
the doctor can't figure it out.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so like they were they were talking about that, and my dad was like, "Okay, so it's supposed to be worse though. It's not supposed to get better." And they're like, "Yeah, it's not supposed to get better." He's like, "Okay, don't tell me anything else. I'm good." And so he left, and then he went back, and every time he would go back, his liver started to get better and better until eventually
Praise
the doctors
God.
were like, "Okay, hold on. Like we need to like put you under. We need to do like actual tests instead of just blood work and stuff like that. We need to like do I think it's called an endoscopy. Basically, they stick a camera down into your into
Mind.
your body."
Yeah, and in
And
your
so
guts. Yeah.
yeah, into your guts. And so they did that. They put him under, and they looked, and they brought him out, and they were like, "We don't know what happened, but your liver is it's called a compensated state, but basically they're like, your liver is functional, like fully functional. It's more functional than it was before you were drinking." And
Wow.
so
Praise
um
God.
and so they were like, as long as you don't touch alcohol again, you're you're gonna have a normal life expectancy. And we don't know how that happened or what happened, but you're free from this basically. And my dad was
Wow.
like, "That's it's because my prayer." And then the doctor basically told him like, "Yeah, you definitely have somebody praying for you because this does not happen." And so, and then we found out that stuff later. Like we found it out a little bit later, um, but just seeing, going back to my relationship with Jesus, seeing all of that happen and going through like the "Where are you, God?" and "Are you real, God?" Going through those questions and seeing, even though there was that moment of doubt, seeing that even though like I had that doubt, God was still there, and He still healed my dad. Like most people aren't gonna be healed of a six or like 6 year addiction, maybe a little bit more, probably closer to 8 year addiction from alcohol in 4 days. Most people don't do that, and then to see that God healed them from something that's was a literal death sentence, and seeing
Yeah.
God move in all that, even when I didn't trust Him, even when I didn't believe that He was real for a second, and just seeing all that just made my faith in Him even stronger. And just like I've seen so many things with that's just one example, but I've seen so many things where like it would take more faith for me to believe that God doesn't exist than that He does.
I
And
love
so like,
that. I love
but
that.
seeing all that happen is like it brought a new closeness with God, and um, just I don't know, just seeing Him heal my dad and heal our family, because that was also I think the 7th December was still happening during that time, and my dad felt like a hypocrite. My dad felt like
Yeah.
that he's like, what am I even doing? But God was still using the ministry even through my dad's mistakes and my dad's like the season where he was hurting. God was still using him, and I believe that's because my dad's heart for people never changed. My dad always had a heart for people. He just didn't necessarily have a heart for himself all the time, and I think that's
Yeah.
why he was like, I whatever, like this is how I can numb pain and everything, and obviously that's not good, but it's still like I think that's kind of where the difference was, and he believed that God could heal other people and did heal other people, but he's like, I don't like he didn't necessarily, not that he didn't believe it for himself, but he didn't really like believe like I could be free from this,
Yeah.
and so he would have these moments where he would be praying to God and like ask God, like, God, why don't you take this from me? After he drank alcohol and he has a bottle in his hand, and like, God, why are you not taking this from me? And God's like, you need to put it down first. I need to see you take that step. And so I learned that in that season of like, we can't just ask God to take things away from us because we don't want to do it anymore, and then we don't want to put in the work to also be willing to sit through the pain of like, this is going to be hard, because it does numb you for that moment, but it leaves you more broken than it did before.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so like I learned a lot of that, but just seeing where God was throughout that whole situation was really cool. And yeah, I know that was a long story, but
No,
uh,
it was great.
it
I love it.
definitely brought a lot of closeness with God, and also our family. Like God sustained our family through that whole situation as well, even though it was hard and like there was a lot of hurt through that. But God sustained us and kept us together, um, and it was super cool to see how, like looking back now, where God was in every single moment. It's like there's there's no I don't believe in coincidences. So
No,
like
not at
there's so many
all.
cool things that God did. But yeah,
Man, that's a beautiful story. I mean, I'd love to. I don't know. Maybe one day I can get your dad on here and talk
yeah,
because our stories are kind of similar. So I mentioned my dad dying.
mhm,
Um, I had so my dad died of COVID,
yeah,
and it was a pretty terrible death. And I was really questioning God at the time because my dad was a pastor, and one of his biggest ministries was going into the hospital and praying with people, and then even holding like little devotionals and services with people that couldn't come out of the hospital. So
yeah,
when he got COVID, and then he couldn't have visitors, and like I started questioning God, like, God, like, okay, you're supposed to reap what you sow. Like, how can he go see all these people in the hospital and then he doesn't get that? And
Yeah.
so then my dad, he died, and then the week of his funeral, I got COVID and couldn't go to his funeral. And
Oh my
dude,
goodness.
that was like the straw that broke the camel's back. Like it broke me.
yeah,
And so, um, man, I started having this idea to go get a little cocaine and get high. And this is after years of not touching it. And so,
yeah,
um, I was sitting there thinking about getting a little bag of cocaine, and my pastor called me on the phone and was like, Jeremy, I don't know what's going on in your life, but man, you need to turn on some praise and worship music. You need to hit your face, get before the Lord. And I said, okay. And I hung up the phone and I was like, I'm not doing it. I'm going to get
yeah,
high. And I went and bought a $20 bag of cocaine, and that turned into a $200 everyday addiction. And I mean,
yeah,
I'd been in ministry and everything, man. And it costed me everything, costed me my family, and, literally everything. And so um, I had a suicide attempt and tried to kill myself. And then my youngest son, found me in the car, and of course called the ambulance, and I don't remember much of that at all, but um, he kind of went through what you went through,
yeah,
spending a lot of time in prayer, and God started showing him that he would be the reason that I got back in church. And so during that um, excuse me, I went from, of course, the suicide attempt. I went into rehab, and I was there like 3 or 4 days, and all by myself in a room, I hit my knees and was like, God, if you'll take me back, and I'm broken beyond repair, but if you can do something, I'll serve you the rest of my life. And I had like a major encounter with Jesus,
Yeah.
um, right there in that room. So, which brings me, Madeline, to your album, The Heart That Bloomed After Death. First, I want to say that, man, there are some songs in there where, I mean, I when I hear it, I feel the presence of the Holy Spirit. Like it's really anointed.
Thank
It's
you.
very brutal, for lack of another word, as far as like what you must have gone through to write that. I actually wrote down, I would describe it as addressing mental health, depression, self-harm, and the redemptive love of Jesus Christ, which is
Mhm.
exactly what I went through. And so that album is really powerful. Would you kind of describe it the same way as that?
Yeah, the whole album is really just was a process of me figuring out who I was and the work that God had done in my life. And we have songs that were about my eating disorder, about how God healed me from that, and songs about I had a friend who struggled with self harm, and I wanted to write a song for her because I believe our stories aren't just centered on us; they're made up of everybody in our life, and so I wanted to make sure I
Wow.
highlighted other people as well. And so my friend had been struggling with self harm and had been free from it for years and would fall back and then would get free from it, and so she asked if I would write a song for her. And I have a few people in my life who have been victims of childhood sexual abuse. And so we wanted to write a song for them and just to give them a voice. And, it's those people are like tied into my story and tied into who I am as a person. And so I thought it was important to make sure they had a say in this story of an album. But it starts out with me being a little bit timid to talk to God because I had tried to do things on my own for so long. And like you said, if you would have me back, like I would love to be back in your arms. And it was tough because I also had the mindset I was like, well, God, if you don't take me back, I would really understand because why would I take somebody back like that who had ignored me, who had told me that I didn't have a say, who had made me feel like I was worthless? Why would I take somebody back like that?
Yeah.
But God is so gracious that He took me back and worked with me and healed my mind and my heart. And we have songs about my struggle with depression and songs about the anger that I was dealing with and what happens if you let that anger consume you. You become this villain in your own story, and you become what all these people you are saying about you, and you're trying to defend yourself and say that that's not true. But when you let this anger and bitterness consume you, then you will just become what they're saying about you. And so God worked on all of those parts of me. And so the last song on the album, it was really just a song of gratitude, just saying all of the transformation that has happened here is just because of you, God. Like I could not have done this without you. And thank you for bringing me here. And, I'm a completely different person. And
Yeah.
I love that I am. I'm so much in a better spot now. And that album just kind of highlights that whole story, the whole process of different different key moments that I was like, okay, we need to highlight this because God was here in this moment.
That's really beautiful. It's that's actually the last song on the album, the title of the album. That's actually my favorite song. I printed out the lyrics here. My camera's blocking them out a little bit, but one of the lines in the song says, "The ledge seems so inviting, but you tether me close, adapting to heal my pain. When my heart's torn open and I can't stop the bleeding, you don't let go." And like that's literally what I lived through. I mean, because I really got to the point where I thought God was done with me because, I mean, our relationship with God. I mean, the Bible even compares that to marriage. And I mean, in my relationship with him, I completely walked away. Like I literally threw my faith away and knew full well what I was doing when I did it. It wasn't even like it was accidental. So,
Yeah.
um, but then in that place of being completely broken, um, is as soon as I started talking to him, it was just like his presence felt right there in that room, all by
Yeah.
myself. So, beautiful album. I love it. Interestingly enough, one of your friends that I found out I'm mutual friends with actually helped me with one of those questions. Her name's Kimberly Huff. She's
Oh
in a
my goodness.
band
Yeah.
Cannibalistic, yeah. And so I was messaging with her the other night. And I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna have Magdalene Rose on my show." And she's like, "Oh yeah, well that's cool. I got her phone number." I'm like, "Oh well, okay, well." So I see where that goes. But um, so let me ask you another question. This so I'm hopefully in not too long I'll be wanting to start dating and get married again. And one of my focuses of like what I've written down that I really want is to have a wife that I do ministry with.
Yeah.
So I think it's amazing that y'all get to do ministry together. Like that's super cool. Can you talk a little bit about like what that's like and how amazing that is for your marriage?
Yeah, I think it's one of the coolest things ever. And I know there's some people that couldn't imagine working with their husband or their wife and they need their like time away to work. But me and Blaise's relationship was long distance for the first like 7 years until actually literally
Wow.
until we got married. And so the fact that I don't have to be away from him now is the biggest blessing. And I had to even stay home for like a week last year from tour because I had to get surgery, and it was literally the longest week of my life, and I hated it so much being away from him. And I just think it's so cool to be able to do something like that, and performing together. Everybody, it's like, oh, the drummer is the backbone of the band, but Blaise is literally the backbone of my life, and he has helped me stand firm in so many things, and encourages me all the time. And I think that's something so special that we get to do. And he really has just helped heal so many holes in my relationship with God and helped me see God in such a bigger way, and has helped me stop limiting God. And I think it's so important to just continue to talk. It's something that's helped us a lot when there's things that happen that I don't understand or I don't know how to communicate something. He's very patient with me, and he's very quick to say, let's talk about this, let's figure it out. And he'll sit with me as I work through what my brain is trying to say. And that's something that's so necessary, not just for every relationship, because that's just kind of like in general you really need that, but especially if you're
Yeah.
going into ministry, it's so important to be willing to communicate and talk and be patient with each other, because you're going to be experiencing so many heavy conversations. You're going to be experiencing like super crazy awesome things that God is doing, but you're also going to be under attack as well from the enemy, because Satan is not going to like that you're going into these places and that you're speaking life over people. So you have to be a unified team together. It can't be you versus him. It has to be you guys together versus the problem. And that's such a cliche thing to say, but it's so true. Like
Yeah.
it can't be a fighting match just because, oh, I want to win the argument. It's like, no, you'd have to talk through things and figure it out, because I want to win our marriage. I don't want to win an argument. And
That's awesome. I
that's
love that.
the biggest thing I think I would offer as advice is you have to talk and you have to be patient and you have to not be willing to hurt each other just to be right.
Yeah. No, I think pretty much everything Maggie said is exactly what I would have said. So I don't really have much to add to that. I think this is actually something that my dad always says, and it's pretty much sums. It's like kind of sums up what um, kind of what Maggie said about communication and like talking about things and like arguments, which we don't really have a lot of arguments because we communicate early on.
Yeah.
But like basically, he always says like if you win the argument but you hurt, this is him talking to me, but it goes both ways. So I'll say instead of wife, I'll say spouse. So
Yeah.
if you win the argument but you hurt your spouse in the progress, then you lost because it's you hurt the person that you love the most, and so um, I think it's important to also like what Maggie said, like it's not about winning an argument. It's not about whatever, me versus you. It's about you guys versus the problem, or whatever situation it is, and sticking together. And so I think she pretty much said everything with that. But I just wanted to say that. I think it is really cool though. Like I guess talking about the experience of what it's like doing ministry together is really cool because like um, a lot of times Maggie's at the table while we're like tearing down because we're part of the road crew. But every now and then I'll get to go out and stuff, and it's really cool because like Maggie gets to talk to these young um, people in general, but especially young girls. And so it's really cool that she gets those opportunities to talk to them and like minister to them through what they're going through, stuff that maybe they wouldn't want to talk to a boy about because it's like
Yeah, yeah.
embarrassing and everything. And same with me, where like there's guys that'll want to come up and talk to me about things about maybe stuff about looking at stuff on the internet or having relationship problems with like I just like I have issues with lust and all this stuff. And that's just one example. And it's the easy example because it's a guy thing, not just a
Right,
guy thing,
right,
but
right.
it's a lot of guys struggle with that. And so, like, it's cool because I get to talk to them about those situations. And then we'll also have situations where, like, um, either like somebody's about to get married or they're newly married or whatever it is. Like, we get to talk to them about that and they get to ask advice about all kinds of stuff. And we get to have that, we have that experience. And we've only been married for 2 years, but we've known each other since 2017. So we've known
Yeah,
each
get
other
that
for
right, man. Get it right.
yeah,
Get it
yeah, I know.
right.
But we've known each other since 2017, and I've pretty much we weren't dating from there, but we've been really close since that tour. And so like we have a lot of experience with each other and just communication specifically because we were long distance for so long. She's from Florida and I'm from Nashville, Tennessee, and um, and so it's just cool like the fact that God uses us individually, but also uses us together in certain situations. And we get to write music and talk about things that both of us enjoy, like writing about. And sometimes it's hard to write certain things that we write about, but we get to
I
do that
would
together. And
imagine.
it's just really cool that we get to do all that and experience it all together because even, there's a lot of people that even in the music industry that don't get to travel with their wife or husband. And so the fact that we get to travel with each other, let alone actually play in a band together is so cool. But it's definitely
And
a huge
another
blessing.
thing too, like another thing I noticed, y'all actually write songs together, and
Mhm.
like that's got to be super cool. Because like for me, about the I, I'm not a musician, and I used to enjoy singing, but years of drugs and smoking cigarettes kind of messed up my voice. Um, but I do enjoy writing services and or writing
Yeah,
sermons and stuff like that. So I'm hoping one day I get to do that with a wife. That would be really cool.
yeah,
So that's cool that y'all get to write music together because music is very personal. I mean, you kind of
yeah,
got to be transparent and show some things. So
sure.
and then what about do y'all have like a I guess would be like maybe your favorite testimony of like a life that was changed at a concert or someone coming to you, hey, I was going to end my life tonight, or have you experienced anything like that with playing music that goes so dark but then becomes something so positive?
Yeah, I think that's something that happens a lot more than people would think, actually. And that's why we're so passionate about this. I think there is a suicide epidemic happening, and there's so many people struggling with their mental health. And it's so easy to just turn a blind eye to it and to just not understand how much of an impact it is really having. But once your eyes are open to it, you're like, I've got to do something about this. People need help. People need somebody to talk to. And even on this past festival, we just got back from a festival, and I talked to probably like every three people, somebody saying, man, I was struggling with suicide, but I heard your
Wow.
song and I decided not to do it. And I had to just stay alive long enough to come see you. And what you said today is going to change my life, and I'm not going to do it anymore. Or that I talked to several girls who struggle with eating disorders. There was another girl who was struggling with self harm, who had struggled with suicide. And she was like, I really wanted to not live anymore, but I knew God had something for me. So I was just kind of coasting through life. And I found you and your band. I've been listening. It's been encouraging me. and I was listening to your song when I got accepted into college, and I'm going into college now, and I'm going to live, and I'm going to have a future.
That's
And
awesome.
it's just so awesome to see it, all these young girls, especially because they are struggling, and it's hard sometimes to feel like you can talk to people because you don't want to burden them. And at least for me as a young girl, I felt like it was my responsibility to just figure out on my own because I didn't want to be a problem to my parents. I didn't want to be a problem to my other family. And um, it just felt kind of like a silent struggle a little bit. And to see them finding the strength to just share their stories and finding their voice and learning that it's okay to admit that you struggled because that's how you get help. That's how you
Yeah.
get those conversations and you find the right people. If you need, you know, more help like than just talking to a therapist, if you need psychological help with medication, and God can work through doctors, and just finding a place where you genuinely can heal. And those people are also just being pointed back to Jesus. I've been able to pray with a lot of them and just keep up with some of them online. And it's so cool to see just the progress that they're making and seeing the like adults that they are becoming as they grow and heal and the lives that they are making for themselves. And just to see Jesus shine through all of that has been just so surreal.
That's really awesome. All right. Well, I guess for kind of like the last question, I'll bring up the elephant in the room. About as far as what would you like to say as far as the controversy about, people canceling shows and all that based on the way you look or sound versus, I mean, all you've got to do is, even if you don't listen to the album, if you just read the lyrics, I mean, you can see Jesus all through there. So, what would you like to say about that? Just if anything.
I think the biggest thing is it's important not to confuse our fear of unknown or our bad experiences with discernment. And I think that's something that even myself is, we're really quick. It's a human thing to just, oh, that's not what I'm used to. It can't be good. And I think it's important to, have that initial reaction and don't don't have an action out of that reaction. Let yourself feel these things first and then take a step out of those, and then you can properly apply discernment. It's important to ask bands, not just me. There's plenty of bands who have experienced this before. Ask them like, hey, what are you why do you do music like this? Why do you dress like this? What is your goal with this music? And just because it's something that you may not like, I think it's important to realize that God can use so many different avenues to reach people. And
Man.
you don't have to like metal music. You don't have to like the clothes. I think that's what's awesome. God needs all of us. And there will be people who need to reach the soccer moms. There's going to be people who need to reach the pop fans. There's going to be people who need to reach the people who love to play golf. They're not going to
Yeah.
like this type of music. So I may not be able to speak to them, but a businessman is going to be able to speak to a businessman. A PTA
Yeah.
mom is going to be able to talk to the PTA moms. And it's going to take all of us if we really want to make heaven crowded, if we really want to reach all the nations, which God literally told us we need to do that. It's going to take all of us in all these different avenues. And so I think it's really important to just keep that in mind as you are going through these things that may be uncomfortable to you, that may be scary or new to you. Give it a second to explain itself, basically, and then you can properly discern whether or not this is of God or not. And it's important not to limit God. He doesn't fit in this little box that we've created for him. That he is an infinite
Amen.
God, and there are no limits to him. And I grew up kind of wanting God to fit in this box, and it didn't work. And once I realized there was so much more to him, my world became so much bigger. And I've just been able to see him move in other people's lives, but also in my own life. And I think it's just so crazy to see the things that he can do. So it's important not to get in the way of what he wants to do.
Amen. That's really beautiful. I guess we can kind of wrap it up. But what I'd like to do is just ask y'all if y'all would pray for anybody that's watching this that may be contemplating suicide or self harm. And then I actually have a friend who's her son committed suicide, and so she's really going through a lot. So if you could just maybe pray for them and anybody that's watching it. And I don't know if anybody's ever asked y'all to do that in an interview, but I think it'd be
Yeah,
pretty cool.
sure. Yeah,
Awesome.
cool. Yeah. Well, guys, thank you so much that we get to be here, be a part of this interview with Jeremy, and um, I just thank you that you opened up all these doors. Um, I just pray that you'll be with anybody listening tonight that may be struggling with depression or maybe thoughts of suicide or just not feeling like they're enough. I pray that you'll just move in their hearts right now, God, that you'll
Yes.
mend those broken pieces that are there. Um, I just pray that you'll let them know that they're not alone, that God, you created them with a purpose, that you created them individually and specifically, that it's not just a batch creation of a bunch of different people, that you created each person to be unique. And I just pray that you'll move in their hearts and let them know where they're supposed to be. Let them know that you're real. Let them know that you want them and that they are seen by you, the creator of the whole universe, God. I pray that you'll just send people their way to encourage them and be there for them in person. Um, I also pray for Jeremy's friend, that God, with them losing their kid, that God, there's nothing that we can say right now that's going to make that hurt go away. But God, I just pray that you'll be with them in that time. Just bring them as much comfort and peace as you can, God, and send people again just to be with them. Just encourage them and maybe not even talk to them, just be there and listen. Or maybe they don't want to talk. Maybe just be there and sit with them in their pain, God. Sometimes that is better than even saying anything. Um, but God, I just thank you so much for this opportunity that we get to come on here and talk with Jeremy and just talk about our stories. And God, I just pray that you'll use this time to minister to somebody who may be going through something. I just pray that you'll just use it for your glory, God. And we just thank you that we get to be a small part of it. But yeah, in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Man, I appreciate y'all. I really do. And hey, I just want to speak over y'all. I really think God's going to grow y'all's ministry like even bigger than what it is now. And I pray and just believe that God's going to open up even more doors, like doors that aren't even
Appreciate
usually
that.
open to Christian bands. And
Sure. We really
man,
appreciate that.
hey, for sure, man. And I want to pray over y'all too, real quick, if that's cool.
Sure. Yeah,
Dear
of
Heavenly
course.
Father, I pray that, Lord, you just, first of all, Lord, bless their marriage, Father. Lord, just continue to make it a beautiful thing. Let other people be able to look at their marriage and say, that's the kind of marriage I want. Lord, give them the desires of their hearts, Lord, the things that they desire that nobody else even knows, Lord. I speak that into their lives. And Lord, I pray that, Lord, for Seventh Day Slumber and Magdalene Rose, Lord, you open up doors that have been closed in the past, and that you give them new ideas, new songs in their hearts and in their minds. And Lord, just bless their ministry tenfold from what it is now. In Jesus' name, amen. And
Amen.
I really appreciate y'all being on here. I'm actually, if it works out, I'm planning on coming and seeing y'all when y'all are in San Antonio on May 6th.
Yeah.
So if someone hollers at you and says, hey, Jeremy's here, you'll know it's me.
Yes, sir. Well, thanks so
But
much for having us. This is
yeah,
super
thank
fun.
you.
Hopefully we get to
Yeah.
see you in San Antonio.
Yeah, for sure, man. And again, thank y'all so much, and God bless y'all, man.
Yes, sir. God bless you.
Y'all have a good one.
You too. We'll see you.
Bye.